Grace came back smelling like salt water and expensive sunscreen, the kind that makes you feel like you're still on vacation even after the plane lands. Her suitcase bumped along the hardwood as she stepped inside, still mid-laugh from whatever joke she'd forced out of the Uber driver. Her sunglasses sat on top of her head like a crown, and her skin had that fresh sun-kissed glow that only comes from days spent not worrying about anything. Especially not your husband. "Hey, babe," she chirped, like she hadn't vanished for 10 days. "Trip was amazing. I'm telling you, we have to go there together sometime. The seafood alone." I didn't interrupt her, just sat on the couch with my tea, staring into it like it had the rest of my life written at the bottom of the cup. She kicked off her sandals, walked over and leaned in, aiming for a kiss I had zero interest in giving. That's when I looked up and said it. "Hope you and Kevin enjoyed the island." The effect was immediate, like someone had reached up through the floor and yanked her soul out through her shoes. The tan couldn't hide the gray that washed across her face. Her smile stuttered. Then she laughed, high, hollow, forced. "Wait, what?" she said too brightly. "Who's Kevin?" I let that hang there, like smoke in a closed room, then calmly said, "Unpack later. Dinner's in the oven." And just like that, I got up and left her standing there, all glowing and golden, with a suitcase full of regret she hadn't even begun to unpack. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, "Damn," I'd have flipped the table, screamed, called her every name in the book. Nah, I've learned that the quietest men at the table are usually the ones with the biggest folder. And before I go any further, if you're the 97% who listen without subscribing, do us a favor. Hit the button. It helps more than you know and keeps the team caffeinated enough to tell stories like this one. Back to Grace. She stood frozen, eyes darting around the room like it might give her some kind of escape hatch. She hadn't planned for this. No blow-up, no confrontation, no scene. Just a calm man, a cooked dinner, and a name she thought she'd kept hidden. She didn't unpack that night. Instead, she hovered in the kitchen while I set the table with mechanical efficiency. Fork, knife, cloth napkin. Mine on one side, hers on the other. I made lemon chicken, by the way, her favorite. The irony wasn't lost on me. We ate in near silence, minus the polite sounds of chewing and the occasional clink of silverware. She kept trying to catch my eyes, like maybe she'd find mercy there if she looked long enough. I didn't give her the satisfaction. "I missed you," she tried. Weak. I nodded, still chewing. "Work must have been rough without me around to bug you," she added, laughing lightly, like we were in on some kind of private joke. "But I bet it was peaceful." I finally looked up. "You could say that," then went right back to my plate. The thing about betrayal is that it's never the affair that really kills you. It's the arrogance. The sheer audacity to come back from a lie and expect everything to just fall back into place because she wore a smile and brought home a souvenir mug. Later that night, I heard her walking around the bedroom like a ghost. Not unpacking, just opening drawers, shutting them, checking her phone, walking to the bathroom and back again. Like movement might drown out the static in her head. She didn't know yet that the real island wasn't the one she'd just returned from. She was already on mine, and I'd made sure she couldn't leave. The next morning, Grace came downstairs dressed like it was date night. Hair styled, makeup subtle but strategic. The good perfume she only wore to dinners with old friends she wanted to impress. She floated into the kitchen, barefoot and smiling like nothing in the world was wrong. "Coffee?" she asked sweetly. I was already pouring my own. She poured hers anyway, adding just enough cream to pretend she liked it that way. She leaned against the counter, sipping, watching me like she was auditioning for the role of wife who totally didn't cheat. "Sleep okay?" she asked. "Fine." She hesitated, then forced a giggle. "You know, for a guy who dropped a nuke last night, you're awfully calm." I shrugged. Didn't seem like the kind of thing worth yelling about. She blinked. That wasn't the response she'd rehearsed. Grace liked scenes. She needed drama to feel real. No fireworks, no fight. It meant I wasn't clinging. And if I wasn't clinging, then maybe she didn't have the power she thought she did. She tried again over breakfast. Toasted my bagel. Cut fruit. Sat beside me at the table like it was Sunday morning, and she hadn't just been on a girl's trip, where Kevin's hand accidentally made it into 5 different Instagram boomerangs. "Work okay this week?" she asked, reaching across to squeeze my hand. I moved it to sip my coffee. She laughed it off like I'd bumped her by accident. "Guess you missed your space," she said lightly. I gave a small nod. "You could say that." Grace spent the rest of the day orbiting me. talking too much, laughing too loud, brushing against me accidentally when she passed by. It was like watching a cat try to unspill a glass of milk. Nothing she did could undo what I knew, and that terrified her. Later that night, I stayed downstairs reading. She said she was tired, kissed my forehead like she hadn't hesitated first, and went upstairs. 15 minutes later, I heard the click of her laptop opening, then silence, then footsteps, quick ones, down the stairs and into the office. Another few minutes passed. Then, I heard her come back up and go into the bathroom. She shut the door and didn't come out for a long time. What she didn't know, I had deleted the folder before she even landed. Girls Trip 22. A cutesy name for the digital scrapbook of her own stupidity. Photos, videos, voice memos, even a screen recording of her on a video call, purring, "I'm just gonna tell him the Wi-Fi's bad again." It was all gone now, and she noticed. I could practically hear her heartbeat from downstairs. I imagined her sitting in the dim bathroom light, phone in hand, checking her cloud accounts one by one. Google Photos, iCloud, shared albums, private backups, wondering if she'd sent any of them to Olivia, or if she'd only told Kevin, the discount fantasy version of a man, to keep it between us. But Kevin's not exactly a genius. And Grace? She'd gotten sloppy. Back upstairs, she eventually came out, face stiff, and slid into bed like a corpse afraid to wake the living. "Something wrong?" I asked quietly, not looking at her. A long pause. "No," she whispered. "Just tired." I nodded and turned out the light. She laid there in the dark, eyes wide open, replaying every stupid message, every smug moment on that yacht, every secret wink she thought she could bury under a mojito. She didn't know what I had. She didn't know when I got it, or how much. She only knew that the folder was gone, and the silence was growing teeth. I got up before the sun, slipped out the door quietly, keys in one hand, headphones in the other. The air still had that pre-dawn chill, the kind that settles into your bones and makes everything feel cleaner than it is. I walked to the corner cafe where the barista still knew my name, still smiled at me like I wasn't living in a marriage built on fantasy and strategic omissions. I ordered 2 coffees, hers with oat milk, no sugar, mine black like I like it. By the time I got back, the house was still asleep, at least in theory. I knew she wasn't sleeping. Not really. Not after last night. She was probably laying there, tangled in the sheets, blinking at the ceiling, rethinking every step from the tarmac to the taxi. I placed the coffee carefully on her nightstand. Next to it, a small note card, the kind we used to leave each other back when we were still pretending we were each other's favorite people. "You must be tired. Not much sleep on the island?" I didn't wait for the reaction. Didn't need to. Downstairs, I sat at the kitchen table and drank my own coffee slowly, listening. She found the note. I heard the gasp, the clink of ceramic, then the quick shuffle of feet and the telltale click of her laptop firing up. It was like pressing play on a tape I already knew by heart. First came the panic, opening her photo gallery, scanning folders, realizing Girls Trip 22 was missing from both her laptop and phone. Then came the false hope, logging into her cloud accounts, hoping maybe, just maybe, she could grab it from a backup. Then the dread, realizing she couldn't even log in. I changed the passwords the day after she left. Quietly, without drama, just enough time to sync everything to a cold drive and wipe the trail from our shared accounts. I'd used her own Face ID to get into her devices before she left. She always slept too deeply to notice. Funny thing, cheaters never check their own vulnerability settings. They assume the secrets only go one way. Upstairs, I could hear her pacing, closet doors opening and slamming. She was searching for her old backup drive, I guessed. Or maybe that second phone she thought I didn't know about. The one she once claimed was for work emergencies, but somehow only rang when she was in hotel bathrooms. She called Olivia. No answer. She called again. Still no answer. Probably because Olivia already knew. She called me the day Grace landed. Said, "I'm not part of this. I didn't know Kevin was coming. I swear." I told her I didn't care. And I didn't. She was just the decoy. Grace was the architect. Next came the photos, deleting them one by one like she could erase pixels from memory. I pictured her holding her phone, fingers trembling, tapping the trash icon over and over again as if digital dust would hide the evidence. But she was too late. I had it all before she even cleared customs. Photos of her sitting on Kevin's lap, still wearing her wedding ring. Videos of her giggling into his neck, whispering things that used to be reserved for me. Screenshots of Airbnb bookings. Even a voice memo she accidentally recorded while drunk, detailing how she planned to come home all innocent, like nothing happened. I had everything, and now so did she, at least the knowledge of it. She knew the walls were closing in, that I wasn't yelling, wasn't begging, wasn't threatening. I wasn't even reacting, and that was worse, because when a man who usually talks goes quiet, it's terrifying. When a man who usually gives shrugs instead of warnings, you're not dealing with a husband anymore. You're dealing with a man who has already left the room. He's just letting you catch up to it. Grace came down the stairs eventually, pale, coffee untouched. She opened her mouth like she wanted to ask something, but the words died on her lips when I looked up from the paper and simply smiled. The kind of smile that says, "You're already in the trap. I'm just letting you hear the gears turn." She waited until I left for the gym to do it. I could practically smell the panic on her as I grabbed my keys and said, "Be back in an hour." She smiled too tightly, nodded too quickly, and bolted upstairs the moment the door clicked shut. Grace always thought she was stealthy, that when she moved fast, I didn't notice the patterns. But she was too loud in the wrong ways and too quiet in the ones that mattered. That's how I knew she was going to try and refresh her suitcase. Her words, not mine. The kind of refresh that comes with removing receipts, wiping evidence, making sure no lip gloss with the initials KB made its way home. She laid the suitcase out on the bed like a corpse she needed to autopsy. Unzipped it slowly, trying to stay calm. The scent of ocean air and guilt practically rolled out of the fabric. She started sorting. Bikini here, sundress there, cheap bracelets from the local market she probably bought just for the Instagram story. Thrown aside like the man she'd married. And then she found it. An envelope, cream-colored, tucked between two rolled tank tops like a message from her past self. But she hadn't put it there. She knew that the second her fingers touched it. She opened it, hands already trembling. One photo, just one. Her on a yacht, sunglasses off, laughing, leaning back into Kevin's arms. His hand unmistakably on her waist. Her wedding ring catching the sunlight like it was mocking her. And beneath it, a note in my handwriting. "Don't worry, I made copies." She dropped it like it was radioactive. Backed away a step, as if putting distance between herself and the image might undo what it captured. Then she snapped into action. Phone in hand, banking app open. The shared savings account. Zero. No, not zero. Emptied. A final transfer timestamped 3 days ago. I didn't steal it. I just reclaimed it. My name was on the account too. It wasn't the money that scared her. Not really. It was what it meant. This wasn't a warning shot. This wasn't, "I'm angry." This was a man who'd already made his exit. She ran to the laptop, flipped it open so fast it nearly slid off the desk. Logged in, her hands still wet from the shower she hadn't yet taken. A notification pinged immediately. One new message. No subject line. Just the body. "You always said you needed space. I made some. No threats. No ultimatums. Just acknowledgement. Like I was giving her the thing she claimed to want, and showing her what it actually looked like." She sat down hard, the kind of sit that only happens when your legs forget how to hold you. Her phone buzzed again. Olivia's name. She lunged for it, but it stopped ringing before she could answer. She tried calling back. Straight to voicemail. Of course Olivia wasn't going to talk. She knew. She had always known. And now Grace didn't know who she could trust anymore. Which friends were loyal. Which ones had seen the photos. Which ones had smiled to her face while texting me on the side. "Hey, you should probably know this." And they were right. I should have known. I did know. Long before she ever left. Kevin's name wasn't hard to find. He used his real email to book the couple's massage on the resort site. Idiot. Grace shut the laptop. Held her face in her hands like she could press all of this out through her temples. She wasn't crying. Not yet. She was calculating. Trying to guess the timeline. Trying to count how many moves I was ahead. She didn't realize the game was already over. I wasn't playing anymore. I was archiving, sorting, labeling, digitally filing away the pieces of a story that no longer needed telling, just preserving. Like a bad museum exhibit nobody visits anymore. Upstairs, she stood and walked back to the suitcase, stared at it, and slowly zipped it shut. But it wasn't a suitcase anymore. It was a coffin, and she was just starting to understand who she buried in it. The first call to Kevin went straight to voicemail. Not the usual chipper "Hey, it's Kev. Leave it. I'll get back." Just the generic robotic voice, cold and impersonal. She hung up before the beep. Dialed again. Same thing. She tried texting next. "Did you say anything to him?" Sent. Delivered. No read receipt. No dots. Just silence. Grace stared at the screen like it owed her more. Like the glass might crack open and explain how things had unraveled so fast. She walked in from paradise 48 hours ago. Confident, smug. Wrapped in the glow of sun and secrecy. Now even Kevin was a ghost. She tried again, this time with more desperation. "Please, I need to know what you said. He's acting weird. The folder's gone. Did you talk to him? I thought we were careful." Still nothing. She waited, watched the screen, walked around the living room in small circles like pacing would conjure answers. Then her phone buzzed. But it wasn't Kevin. It was me. A single text. "Don't worry. He didn't have to." She dropped the phone like it stung. Because that was the worst-case scenario, wasn't it? That Kevin hadn't broken under pressure. That she hadn't been betrayed by her fling. No, worse. I'd known without him. Without confession. Without confrontation. I'd known because I paid attention. Because I wasn't the idiot she thought I was. She picked the phone back up, hands shaking now. Scrolled through her contacts, heart racing, mouth dry. Then she dialed her sister. Talia. The one person who might still take her side. It rang 3 times before the call connected. "Hey," Grace said quickly, voice thin and too high. Listen, things are. Thomas is acting weird. I think he knows about something. But I need you to. Can you just tell him it was nothing? It was stupid. It was just once." A pause. Then Talia said, voice low and tight. "You slept with someone else and you're calling me for PR help?" "No, I mean yes, but it's not what you think. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. And I swear, it only happened once." "Grace." Her sister cut in, cold now. "This isn't about once." Another pause. "He offered to pay for Dad's hospital bills." Grace froze. "What?" "Last week," Talia continued. Quietly. No credit. Just called the billing office and paid the remainder. No drama. No speech. Just action. Grace's jaw moved, but no words came out. Talia wasn't done. You were drinking cocktails in a pool while we were juggling specialists and insurance calls. You told me you couldn't help because you were burnt out. Said you needed to recharge. He sent money. You sent selfies. Talia, you always thought you were smarter, prettier, untouchable. But let me tell you something. You're not the victim here. You're just the last one to realize how little you mattered. Click. Call ended. Grace stared at the screen. No missed calls. No replies. Just a dark reflection of herself in the black glass. Hair still perfectly curled. Makeup still intact. But the person looking back was unrecognizable. She wanted to scream, throw the phone, blame someone. But the truth had corners that cut. Because it wasn't just about a fling with Kevin anymore. It was about a man who gave without asking for applause. A man who paid for her dying father's care while she was lying to his face. A man who knew everything and still held the door open when she came home like nothing had happened. She sank to the floor, knees pulled to her chest, phone clutched in her hand like it might still deliver a lifeline. But it wouldn't, because when you burn a house down, you don't get to beg for a blanket. Grace marched into the law office with sunglasses still on, jaw clenched like she was chewing gravel. The receptionist asked if she had an appointment. She didn't need one. She was prepared to throw down a platinum card or cry in the lobby, whichever got her through the door faster. The junior partner who finally took her and had that calm, detached look of someone who'd seen it all. Prenups, affairs, hidden assets, sudden disappearances. Grace sat across from him, legs crossed, smiling like she still had leverage. "I need to know," she said, fingers tapping her phone screen anxiously. "If my husband's filed anything, a divorce, legal separation, restraining order, whatever." He typed her name and Thomas's into the system. Clicked, read, scrolled. "Nothing filed," he said. She blinked. "Are you sure?" He turned the screen toward her. "Unless he used an alias or a secret second identity, which I doubt, there's nothing. No case numbers, no filings, no pending actions." "No divorce?" she asked, voice quieter now. "Nope." He leaned back. Usually when someone comes in with this much urgency, it's because their partner already made a move. Sounds like he hasn't. She forced a smile. Then maybe I have time. But she didn't feel relief. She felt worse. Because if he hadn't filed, that meant he wasn't trying to take anything from her. Which could only mean one thing. He already had. She didn't even say goodbye. Just muttered a thank you and bolted. Her heels clicked violently against the tile as she raced to the car, peeled out of the parking lot, and sped home like she could outrun whatever was crawling up the back of her neck. She burst into the house, tossing her purse on the floor, heart pounding as she ran to the office and yanked open the filing cabinet. The property folder was there, just like always, tabbed, organized, smug. She opened the deeds and froze. Her name was gone, replaced, quietly, legally, efficiently, weeks ago. She flipped through the pages in disbelief. The title on the lake house? Gone. The deed to the condo they'd bought in her name for tax purposes? Transferred. The cars? Technically leased by the LLC. An LLC Thomas had apparently restructured last month. One where she was no longer listed as anything. Not an officer. Not a shareholder. Not even a spouse. She rushed to her laptop. Tried to log in to their joint financial planners portal. Password changed. Reset link sent to Thomas's email. Her chest tightened. Sweat pooled under her arms. She ran to the safe in the closet, her last place of control. It opened with the familiar code. One of the only things he hadn't changed. Inside was one thing. A neon pink beach bag. The one she brought on the trip. The one she couldn't find when she packed to leave the island. She pulled it out with shaking hands. Inside was her old burner phone, the one she used to call Kevin. And a thick stack of paper. She sat on the floor and flipped through it. Transcripts. Dozens of pages. Every call. Every voicemail. Every flirtatious whisper. Word for word. You're so much easier to talk to than him. If he knew how good you are, I'd be out of excuses. It's just a girl's trip. He won't question it. He never does. At the very bottom, in block print, was one last note. I didn't change the locks. You were never locked in. You just never looked at the exits. She dropped the pages like they were coated in acid. Scrambled back on the carpet, breathing too fast, too shallow. She'd come home thinking she could manipulate her way through this. That if she just cried enough, smiled enough, seduced enough, she could regain control. But Thomas wasn't trying to win. He wasn't even playing. There wouldn't be a court battle. No headline divorce. No drawn-out war of attorneys. Because wars are fought over territory. And Thomas? He already owned everything. The envelope was hand-delivered. No return address. Just her name written in crisp block letters like a summons. The courier didn't say a word, just smiled too politely, then turned and walked away like he just handed over a bomb. Grace opened it with shaking fingers. Inside, a single ivory card. Tonight, 7 p.m. No makeup, no lies, no restaurant name. But she didn't need one. She already knew. There was only one place it could be. The small trattoria they used to go to before the money, before the bonuses, before the condo and the leather seats and the island detours. Back when their biggest argument was over whether to order the tiramisu or the panna cotta. The place they'd promised they'd return to every year, no matter how busy life got. They hadn't been in for. At 6:15, she was standing in front of the mirror, frozen. Her hand hovered over her foundation. Then she remembered the card. No makeup. She almost didn't go. Pride clawed at her. But curiosity was louder. She needed to know what this was. A trap? A test? A chance? She showed up at 6:57, wearing a plain blouse, minimal jewelry, no mascara. The hostess recognized her, offered a tight smile, said nothing, led her to the back corner. He was already there. Thomas sat with a glass of water, no menu, no expression. Just waiting. She sat down slowly, unsure of where to put her hands. He didn't stand, didn't smile, didn't ask how she was. No wine on the table. No appetizers ordered. The waiter came and went like a shadow, dropping off 2 plates of pasta. Her favorite, of course. She hadn't ordered. He had. Somehow that felt worse. They ate in silence. The scrape of forks on ceramic was louder than any accusation. Halfway through, she tried. "This is a nice surprise," she said, her voice dry. "I wasn't sure if you wanted to see me." He looked up. Not cruel. Just gone. "I didn't," he said simply. "I wanted closure." She blinked. "Closure." He nodded. Went back to his food. She swallowed hard. I didn't mean for this to happen. I know, he said. You meant for it to stay hidden. Her appetite vanished. The pasta turned to paste in her mouth. They finished eating. Still no wine. No jokes. No flirting. No trip down memory lane. Then dessert came. Tiramisu, 2 spoons, untouched. Thomas reached into his jacket and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Folded. Crisp. He slid it across the table like a receipt. She opened it slowly. A list. 15 charities. Local. National. International. Medical foundations. Literacy programs. Disaster relief funds. At the bottom, one line. Final joint account balance. $212,379. Donated in full. She stared at the paper. What is this? He sipped his water. You always said we should do more for others. Figured I'd help you mean it. She looked up, finally letting the anger crack through. You gave away everything? He nodded. Calm. Certain. It wasn't mine anymore. And it sure as hell wasn't yours. Her throat tightened. We could have figured this out. He gave a small, pitying smile. I did figure it out. She opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered, Why the dinner? Thomas leaned back, folded his hands. Because I wanted to watch you sit across from the consequences. Then he stood, didn't look back, didn't say goodbye, just dropped a few bills on the table and walked out, leaving her sitting there with her untouched dessert, her empty hands, and a receipt that said more about her than any confrontation ever could. It wasn't revenge. It was indifference. And that, she finally understood, was far worse. She sat there picking at the rim of the tiramisu plate long after Thomas stood, maybe hoping the cold cream and coffee-soaked sponge would ground her in something familiar, something sweet. But all she tasted was ash. When she finally pushed herself up and walked out, the air felt heavier. The city didn't care about her private implosion. Traffic buzzed. Couples laughed. Life moved. She, on the other hand, was frozen. Trapped in a still frame where the only thing louder than her silence was the echo of what Thomas didn't say. But the next day he called. One line. Lunch? She said yes so fast it embarrassed her. As if her vocal cords had been waiting by the door with their bags packed. She dressed carefully. Simple blouse again, but this time mascara, soft lipstick. She knew it broke his rule, but she needed armor now. Not to seduce, to survive. The restaurant wasn't a memory-laced favorite this time. Just neutral, modern, boring walls, polite servers, no history. He was already seated again. No hug, no hello, no you look well. Just menus between them like a wall. They ordered sandwiches, nothing indulgent, just fuel. She took small bites, barely tasted anything. Then, without looking up, Thomas leaned back and said, I knew before you boarded the plane. She froze mid-chew. What? He repeated, voice clear, calm, slow. I knew before you even left. She choked slightly, reaching for her water. Gulped too fast, coughing. He waited for her to stop. Kevin, he said, voice flatter than ever. Booked the flight using his real name. Idiot move. Shared itinerary with his own email. You used the shared iPad to book your seat. I got the notification. She swallowed hard. Wait, the shared? He nodded. Left your email open, too. I didn't even have to snoop. The breadcrumbs weren't just obvious, Grace. They were gift-wrapped. Her voice cracked. Why didn't you say anything? He finally looked her in the eye. Because you already said it all. She frowned, confused. Not to me, he clarified. But to him. To Olivia. To Talia. To your stupid voice memos. You told everyone the truth. Except the one person who mattered. Tears welled up. I was scared. He shrugged. So was I. Scared I married someone who could fake love for that long. She reached across the table. Thomas, He pulled his hands away. Slowly. Deliberately. This isn't one of those stories where the wife cries and the husband breaks. Her lips trembled. I made a mistake. No, he said. You made a choice. Silence stretched between them like a canyon. I didn't plan to fall for him, she whispered. I didn't plan to fall out of love with you, he replied, standing. The bill was already paid, prearranged, probably. Classic Thomas. Always the planner. Always neat, efficient, devastatingly clean. She stood too, desperate now. Can't we just talk? He looked at her one last time. We just did. And with that he turned and walked out again. No parting glance. No dramatic exit. Just the quiet, composed footsteps of a man who had already said goodbye months ago. She stood in the middle of the dining room, lost, tears running down skin still glowing from a vacation that no longer felt like hers. The hostess gave her a sympathetic glance, but didn't say a word, and Grace realized this wasn't about forgiveness anymore. This was about a man who had already made peace, and left her behind in the wreckage of her own script. The front door was open when she pulled up. Not wide, but cracked, just enough to feel like an invitation or a warning. She stepped out of the car slowly, heart thudding, eyes locked on the unfamiliar moving truck in the driveway. There were two men inside. One was lifting a box labeled Kitchen Grace. The other was already wheeling a dolly out, stacked high with carefully taped containers. She barely recognized the handwriting, though it was her own. Thomas must have gone through everything while she was still trying to rehearse her tears. She rushed up the steps. "Excuse me, what is this?" she barked at the younger mover, who barely glanced at her. "We were told to take everything labeled with your name. Bedroom, closet, home office, vanity, storage," he said calmly. "Rest is staying." She pushed past them and stepped inside. The house felt amputated. Photos gone from the walls, bookshelves bare. Her favorite candle holders missing, but only the ones she bought. The others, his, still in place like museum artifacts. She ran upstairs. The bedroom looked like a motel now. No framed pictures. No extra pillows. No woven throw blanket at the end of the bed. The dresser drawers were all open and empty. Not just of his things, but of any trace that she had once shared this space with someone who truly saw her. She walked into the walk-in closet. The left side, his side, was gone. Hangers still swayed gently from the rush of air when he'd taken everything out. Only her half remained. Shoes, dresses, and a now pointless white dress from a wedding that had already been erased. She sat down on the bench in the middle of the closet and tried to catch her breath. But it felt like the air had been replaced with static. Downstairs, the scraping of boxes continued. She finally staggered to the kitchen, fingers trailing the wall like she needed something to hold her up. That's when she saw it. A simple manila folder on the counter. Her name printed across the tab in bold. She hesitated before opening it, like it might bite. Inside, one document, neatly printed, signed, postnuptial agreement, dated 2 years ago. Her signature sat proudly at the bottom. Loopy, confident, oblivious. Her memory started rewinding like a film in reverse. Back to the night she'd signed it. He said it was just future-proofing. That it was suggested by a new accountant, something wealthy couples did once assets got real. She hadn't read it. She was too busy texting someone about weekend plans. Probably Olivia, maybe Kevin. She flipped to the section marked with a red tab. Clause 14. In the event of infidelity, all marital claims revert to the innocent party. This includes, but is not limited to, shared assets, real estate, vehicles, investments, and future interest. She stared at it. Then again at her signature. Then back at the clause. The walls started tilting. On top of the folder was a small note card. Familiar handwriting. Understood. No threats. No insult. Just that one word. She couldn't scream. Couldn't cry. She just sank. Against the cold granite counter. Palms pressed flat. Breath shallow. He hadn't locked her out. He hadn't thrown her away. He'd just followed the rules she agreed to, while she was too busy pretending rules were for other people. She thought he'd never notice. Thought he'd never read the fine print. But he had. And now she owned exactly what she'd signed for. Nothing. The hotel smelled like bleach and old regret. Industrial carpet. Beige wallpaper. A front desk clerk too bored to care that the woman checking in looked like she'd just walked out of a house fire in a silk blouse. Grace didn't even remember the drive. Just that her tires crunched across the parking lot gravel, and her hands didn't stop shaking until she was staring at the blank TV in a room that had no memories, no warmth. Just silence and artificial air. She dropped her purse on the bed. Opened her phone. Tried Thomas. Blocked. No ringtone. No voicemail. Just that flat rejection screen like the call didn't even have a right to exist. She sat down. Took a breath. Tried again. Kevin. It rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. Voicemail. She didn't leave a message. She sent a text instead. "You need to talk to me. It's serious." No reply. Not even a read. She waited 10 minutes. Then 20. Then the phone buzzed. She lunged. But it wasn't a text. It was an email. Subject line: "Your rebooking confirmation is complete." She blinked. What rebooking? She hadn't touched her account. She opened it. The details were already filled in. Passenger: Grace Monroe. Flight: one-way. Destination: the same island resort she'd just left. Departure: tomorrow morning. Seat: first class. Baggage allowance: maximum. Meal: vegan, her preference. She scrolled down. There was a note at the bottom. One line: "Since you loved it so much, I figured you'd want to stay a little longer." No signature. No logo. Just that. Her breath caught in her throat. She checked the payment info. Card ending in 0604. His card. Still tied to her profile. Still active. He'd paid for it. Booked it. Scheduled it. Like he'd been planning this part long before she ever stepped foot back in the house. She stumbled up from the bed and ran to her purse. Dug through it. Wallet, keys, charger, lipstick. No passport. She dumped the contents onto the bed. Credit cards. Business receipts. No passport. She tore through her suitcase. Her laptop bag. Her coat pocket. Nothing. It was gone. Vanished. She screamed. Loud. Raw. Wordless. Then slapped a hand over her mouth because she realized no one was coming. No husband. No lover. No sister. No ally. She had burned every bridge and salted the ashes. Now she stood alone. In a hotel room with beige walls and a digital boarding pass to a place that didn't want her anymore. A place that now symbolized everything she had gambled and lost. And somewhere, Thomas was probably reading a book, sipping tea, or maybe walking his dog. Not smiling. Not watching. Just done. She looked down at her phone again. The flight was confirmed. Non-refundable. Her name was on it. The hotel checkout time was 11 a.m., and her seat was waiting.